since I worked at.
All right, I'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. We just got done with the meeting, so I'll skip past the pledge and moment of silence if you guys don't mind. And then we'll move right on the roll call.
Make sure your mics are on. Commissioner Robbins?
Here.
Commissioner Walter?
Here.
Commissioner Bunnick?
Here.
Commissioner Wessel?
Here.
Commissioner Campbell?
Here.
Commissioner Elgire? Here. Chairman Yoder?
Here.
All present.
All right, thank you. Next up, we got approval of the agenda, along with any additions or deletions. Can I have a motion?
Motion to approve the agenda as presented.
All right.
Second.
Motion been made and supported. Discussion? Not all in favor of that motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay.
Oh, no, I didn't. I already said aye.
Jeez.
I thought you told me to.
7-0. I could say 6-1 just to spite you now.
Didn't want to be here in the first place.
All right, next up we have public comment. Anything that's on the agenda? Mr. Wiesner?
Is this gotta be agenda related?
Yep,
Yes.
agenda specific.
Well, we said Elmwood Township, this is absolutely agenda specific in my mind. You can judge for yourself, shut me off if it's not. Paper ballots hand counted, there's a cost to that. There's a cost to the machines. And where it's been tried in Arkansas, it was.
Mr. Chair, this isn't it, because it's neither, not fleet management, nor property tax revenue, or capital project. So it's not general budget, it's these three specific items. We'll listen to you at the end.
Okay, it is absolutely on the budget, but it has to be specifically on that?
On our agenda today, it's about fleet management, property tax, and capital project.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry. Any other public comment? All right, if not, we're on to commissioner comment. We have none. We're on to our first action item, enterprise fleet management. Christopher, please, Christopher, awesome. Thank you. Coming?
I'll just give a little introduction. Lauren and I have been talking with Chris for a couple months now on this possibility. And recently we also brought in the finance department as we got more serious about considering this. But this is a program where we could potentially save some capital expenditure costs and transfer them to a lease cost, reducing our individual outlay per year, and then optimizing when we purchase and sell vehicles into the future. And Chris will give details on how that has the possibility of saving us money over time.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon. My name is Chris Tyner, and I represent Enterprise Fleet Management. I'm native to West Michigan and have lived here for my entire life. Again, thank you for your time and consideration this afternoon. Lauren, next slide, please. Enterprise is a privately held company that has been in business for over 60 years. We are a third-generation family-owned company that is headquartered in St. Louis, Missouri. Enterprise is named after the aircraft carrier USS Enterprise, where our founder, Jack Taylor, served during World War II. Enterprise Fleet, in conjunction with our sister company, Enterprise Car Rental, operates the largest fleet of vehicles in the world, over 2 million vehicles. Next slide, please. Throughout the country, we currently partner with more than 1,500 government entities. We have over 60 government clients here in the state of Michigan. We also have several hundred commercial clients in the state as well. This slide shows a few of the government entities and commercial entities we work with here in the state of Michigan. Fleet management partners that are local to northern Michigan include Grand Traverse County, Antrim County, Wexford County, Osceola County, Oceana County, Charlevoix County, Manistee County, Otsego County, Emmett County, and Waywood County. Next slide, please. Of the 2 million vehicles Enterprise operates, we replace 1 million of those vehicles annually. The reason for this is to achieve the lowest total cost of ownership on our vehicles. Enterprise's expertise, including but not limited to vehicle acquisition, maintenance, fuel, resale, and perhaps most importantly, determining the optimal time to replace a particular vehicle. Excellent. Once we've identified the optimal time to replace a vehicle, we recommend the equity lease to pay for the vehicle. The equity lease allows us to match a holding period with a payment term. The equity lease is not like a traditional dealership lease because it does not have over mileage or wear and tear penalties. In fact, this lease is much more similar to a finance than a traditional dealership lease. On this slide is an example of how this lease works with a sample vehicle. Let's say, for the sake of our example, that we can acquire this new Chevy Equinox for $33,000, and we determine that through the course of our calculation, it makes sense to operate this vehicle for 4 years and 100,000 miles. At the end of that term, 4 years and 100,000 miles, the market value for this particular vehicle is expected to be $15,000. From there, Enterprise will set up a lease using the starting price of $33,000, paying this vehicle down to an unpaid balance of $9,000 at the end of the finance term. In this case, we sell the vehicle for you at $15,000 at the end of 4 years. In that transaction, the first $9,000 goes to pay off this vehicle. The remainder, the $6,000 highlighted in green, is money that's owed back to the county. The benefit of this lease is to reduce cash outflow, avoid over mileage and wear and tear charges, and also, most importantly, gain equity for the value of the vehicle at the time of sale. This lease is also flexible that you can terminate the vehicle at any point in time. The only obligation is the outstanding balance on this vehicle. Next slide, please. This slide is called the fleet planning analysis. This analysis utilizes the equity lease and our recommendations on the best replacement period and compares that to the county's current replacement strategy. The fleet being considered for this analysis are 36 of the light-duty vehicles the county currently owns. This gold line at the very top of the page, or near the top of the page, represents the current purchasing pattern, annual maintenance cost, fuel costs for the fleet. In total, on an annual basis, the county's current average budget is around $423,203 to operate the current 36 vehicles if you consider the budget to replace the vehicles, maintain them, fuel them, and resell. You can find this number as part of the gold line highlight, the second column from the right. Just below that are the recommendations for Enterprise for this year. Based on our calculations that will result in the lowest total cost of ownership, we recommend replacing 10 vehicles. If you total these 6 columns that are just to the right of the purchase column, you'll notice that the first year's budget for Enterprise program is expected to be $243,000. Through the Enterprise program, the vehicles will be replaced more regularly and will have a greater resale return. Replacing vehicles at the ideal time will also help avoid unscheduled maintenance and downtime and will improve fuel economy. The following rows show the recommended replacements for the next 9 years in the subsequent budgets. You will notice in 2029 the plan will fully convert to Enterprise vehicles, and because of that, in 2030, there are no gains from the sale of the current fleet in the equity-owned column. Enterprise will assist the county in acquiring vehicles, tracking operational costs of fuel and maintenance, and selling vehicles. The impact of this plan is that the vehicle age will be reduced from over 7 years on average to less than 5 years, and the program is expected to generate savings for the county. Enterprise will consult with the county on a quarterly basis for opportunities to improve the efficiency of the fleet through proactive vehicle replacements. In our meetings, we will provide analysis that consider the total cost of ownership of the vehicles, including purchase costs, maintenance, fuel, and resale. Last year, Enterprise, my company, sold more than 1 million vehicles for a total of 110% above trading value, also known as Black Book. Next slide, please. In working with the county, the next slide illustrates the first year's pricing of the requested replacement. Whereas the previous slide documents replacing 10 current county vehicles with a 1-for-1 replacement, The county is instead selling 9 vehicles and replacing them with a variety of Ford Police Interceptors, Silverado 2500, and Chevy Equinox. This slide documents the first year's pricing for those requested 9 vehicles. In total, the first year's capital outlay for 9 vehicles will be $149,891.48. There will be approximate resale gains of $44,000 from the exiting vehicles, which means the net capital outlay for this first year will be $105,891.48. This is for 9 new vehicles. This includes the equipment on those 9 vehicles, and that's particularly noteworthy for the police vehicles that require equipment to get those roads ready. Next slide, please. As part of this program, Enterprise offers a complimentary website and driver mobile application. The website and mobile application will provide preventative maintenance reminders amongst other functionalities. The website will also offer a central location for all fleet data, including vehicle cost, lease payment, operating costs, and resale. Next slide, please. In summary, the county is looking for a solution to better manage the fleet. Currently, over 40% of the vehicles are beyond the recommended holding period. This causes higher fuel costs, maintenance costs, and reduces vehicle reliability. With the current replacement pace and strategy, it would take over 7 years for the county to replace its current fleet. Going forward, Enterprise will reduce maintenance costs by over 40% with this plan. We will utilize the open-end lease to maximize cash flow and also recognize equity from vehicles sold. The county will utilize Enterprise's ability to sell vehicles. Enterprise is skilled in this area, again, selling about 1 million vehicles every year for an average of 110% of trade-in value, also known as Black Book. This all comes with the benefit of our tools, technology, and our account team that's here in West Michigan to reduce the amount of time spent managing the fleet. Thank you for your time. Thank you. And I'd be happy to answer any questions if you have any.
Go ahead.
How much staff time would it take from, on our end, to work with you? Would there be a fleet manager on site? Would it be Lauren's job? How do we manage the details of working with you?
So for most counties, including Grand Traverse, Antrim, and others that I mentioned, what will happen is we'll work with the individual departments. So we'll work specifically with, for example, the Sheriff's Department on determining their needs, what they have, what they'll need. Other departments like DPW or others, we work with them directly. So on average, the time is less, and we're used to working with departments, but that can be configured however you might like here. That's something that's certainly open to whatever your department is.
Yeah, is there any limit on the mileage on a vehicle per year?
No, sir. So what we'll be looking at is the historical average annual mileage on the vehicle. We'll also consult with those departments, and then we'll make a determination on how many miles they can drive. From there, we'll set up a holding period that will reflect when that vehicle will most likely be needed to replace based on the estimated mileage. But if the mileage were to change, the lease is flexible in the sense that we can replace it earlier or keep it longer to make sure that we maintain that sweet spot for that ideal replacement period that we did. There's not an over mileage or component at all.
So if a car like we had this year, the cars are just sitting in the parking lot not being used, and we had 3 of them, I believe. So would we still have to pay the lease on them then?
We would recommend that you sell those unless they were going to be used somewhere else. We can dispose of those vehicles.
Well, if they were for officers and they don't have that much miles on them, so you'd say you'd want us to sell them and then we buy new ones?
Well, I guess it depends on the average annual usage of the vehicle. So if the vehicle's being used and you want to keep them, then yeah, you continue to pay on those. If you have a vehicle that's doing specifically low mileage, then maybe those ones don't make it in the enterprise program. The vehicles we were looking at here on this analysis in particular, we're averaging, I think, around 17,000 miles per year. In that type of an environment, it does make sense to proactively replace those vehicles.
Yeah, because I'm thinking specifically about the marine truck. They use it for 3 months or 4 months, and then it sits for, anywhere from 7 to 8 months. So that would not be in the program then, is what you're saying?
If the mileage is low enough, yeah, we probably would recommend either not putting it in the program or just doing something different with it, not having it on a proactive replacement pattern. We would determine when that point was, but it may not be like the other vehicles. So yeah, it can either be held out completely or just on a different plan.
Different schedule.
Commissioner Algar?
So for instance, I think we have cars that are labeled. Do you do that?
Yes, yep, so,
And would there be a dedicated account manager for the county so everyone knows there would be?
yeah, there would be a client strategy manager who would be responsible for the financial impact and the financial planning of the fleet. And there would be a account fleet coordinator who would actually be arranging the logistics and helping you with the day-to-day items. So there's actually two people in particular that would be assigned. You would likely meet them in person. And they get to know you personally with the, the county, the folks working in the departments, and working with them on a regular basis.
My understanding of these leases, there's a lot of the advantage is in the equity that you end up losing. Do you understand what I'm saying? We own all these, and at the end of this 10-year period, we will have zero equity in any of our vehicles. Does that make sense to you? There's more money to be gained going into this, and then if you go out of it, there's more burden to exit.
So I think if you look at the analysis, there's actually more equity in vehicles that are going to be sold sooner. So you'll have the same amount of equity. The way these leases work is that you do build equity in these vehicles as you're paying them down. So this is not a traditional dealership lease where you have a fixed payment and you turn the vehicle in and that's it. The way we transact specifically, when we sell the vehicle, we then sell it, we get the gain, and the money that's over and above what's outstanding on the vehicle goes back to you. So there is an equity position that you would have access to every vehicle.
And the other question, I think we were talking generally in annual terms. How much flexibility would there be if we don't need a vehicle or we do need a vehicle, as opposed to having an annual budget? We come to you in May and say, look, now we've got this vehicle we don't need, we need to dump it. Or now we need another vehicle, how are we going to work that in? It's a pain in the butt right now for us to do that, let me just say that.
That's why we're proposing this process, to take that pain in the butt away.
So we would age you.
Nice phrasing, by the way.
Just following suit.
So the short answer is we would be able to pick up and dispose of those vehicles. You'd obviously, we want to consult with you on, financially, how that would impact the overall plan. If you just bought a vehicle and you need to sell it, maybe talk about what that looks like, or if we have a way to arrange for that. But you're not required to keep a vehicle for any particular period of time. And if you, for some reason, like a marine vehicle or something changed where it's just low mileage, maybe we sell it, or maybe we just hold on to that vehicle and we don't replace it because the mileage isn't high enough to really drive or to really call for an active replacement on that vehicle.
And do you have an affiliation with any one car company, or how does that work? Do we get to choose what brands, Ford, Chevy, All-American?
Whatever you want, we can get them all, but typically in these conversations, it's the big three. But Toyota, Nissan, all of them are available. So it's not up to us, it's up to you. And that would be part of the conversation we have with departments and with you all potentially about what your preferences were, and we'd be happy to fulfill that. We will lead with the best vehicle from a total cost of ownership, meaning our recommendations will follow which vehicles will do the best overall, not just from a pricing standpoint, but the cost of the vehicle, but what does the maintenance look like? What does the fuel economy look like? And the big one that most counties miss prior to doing this is, what does the resale look like when you sell this at the right time? We're not taking this into the ground anymore, we're selling it now at the right time, and how does that ultimately impact the total cost? So those are the things that we bring to you. You make your decisions based off of what you want to, whatever the politics might be, and then we execute.
How long have you worked for the company?
16 years.
Since you're 5.
Yeah.
John?
Just have a question for the
Can you come to the table?
Do you want to come up to the
Ask
table
him
here?
if he can come right now.
Only question, is there any residual or benefit for us to be able to buy the leased vehicle back for our non-fleet
resources. You will have the first right on these vehicles, so in case if you want to buy it or pay them off and take title, yes, you can do that.
Kathy? Yep. Yep.
I know that Enterprise did a proposal for Grand Traverse County in 2024, and one of the questions that came up there was shop relationships, because each of our departments, they like their maintenance done at various oil change places around, like Super Auto, Vans, they might go to Fox's, they have their department choices. Could you address where we can go for shop maintenance?
Yeah. So in its current configuration, you can go where you'd like. There is an element of this program where you can option us to be able to track and audit the maintenance for the county. There's a lot of things that go into this. If you were to select for that option, there are certain shops that will be available. Right now, there are none in the peninsula that are currently part of the program. However, I believe in going past Vans and also chatting with them that they would qualify. There would be one shop that could be added into this program for us to be able to work with them and to be able to track and audit the maintenance with Enterprise. If you were to not select to go with the maintenance program, you can continue to use all your shops, Tro's, Vans, those places are still available. So you're not required to use our shops, but if you wanted to add another program in, there would be a select group of shops that you have to go to.
And then for the outfitting of the patrol cars, we typically use Radio One.
Okay.
Is that one of that type of arrangement?
So that's much more open-ended, and so if you have vendors who are actively working to build the vehicles, then that's very, very open-ended.
And then
Before you move on to the next question, Kathy, if you were to do that, though, you would include the cost of the special police equipment and branding and all of that into the capitalized cost of the lease, correct?
Correct, and that amount is what's featured in
Right.
I think the second and third, the last slide.
So we've already factored the cost. We did provide you with costs from the sheriff's department as to what it typically costs them when they do it individually. Because what we'll typically do now is we'll get the car from the dealership or whoever, and then buy that and then send it to the Radio North, I guess it does all of that work to turn it into a police car with the additional equipment, and we end up paying two separate costs for that, but it becomes all part of the capitalized lease cost under this arrangement.
the aftermarket installation.
Correct. It's treated as pre-market, I guess, actually, in this arrangement.
And then the other question was about, you mentioned monitoring these vehicles, the online presence, so there's a computer component that the Enterprise tracks the vehicle.
So the specific, there is. That's not been featured or shown here in the pricing. What I was specifically referring to is the fuel economy, so we would be able to connect with the current wax cards, and then also the addition of the maintenance tracking on the vehicle. So that information, that data, would be available and tracked through the website. So it's not there can be added, there can be options, but that is not been featured in our conversation or the pricing.
And then, as one of the commissioners pointed out, we do have some low mileage vehicles in our fleet right now, and we typically do a pass along of vehicles from one department to another, from a high mileage department when they're done, and go to a low mileage department, and pass along as part of this.
No, you would certainly be able to pass them along. There would be something presented to the county where we would look at, should you pass it along, does that make financial sense? Or is there a financial benefit to replacing that vehicle and maybe putting something else in? So ultimately, it's your decision.
And then Grand Traverse County, their presentation, they currently have 20 cars under the program, and they're the unmarked detective cars in the police division. Mm-hmm. And they're dealing on a bigger scale, a much bigger scale. And if our fleet is smaller, I picked up that there's a small fleet division for Enterprise. Is there a different pricing structure? If we fall within is there a threshold where we wouldn't be in the same volume do I want to say?
Yes, I
Economy of
agree.
scale,
Yeah.
economy of scale, you know, so I picked up there's a small fleet division of enterprise based in St. Louis. Are we near that?
So the threshold is that any organization would have at least 20 vehicles in their fleet, not as that being a program, but that you have that many vehicles to qualify for the local service. And so the pricing is the same either place, it's just that you get much better service because there's people here in Michigan that would work with you rather than someone else in St. Louis. We're great at St. Louis, but the point is to have someone here.
All right, and then I know Mike said, and let me just ask him if he has questions. He said, did you have additional questions? Okay, those are just some of the questions I had. Thank you.
So you mentioned earlier about mileage. Is that unlimited? Let's say one department exceeds way 1 year. I mean, is that just over average? Is there a limit? Or it's unlimited year to year pretty much, and that doesn't cost into the factor of anything, of the cost or anything?
The mileage is unlimited. We set up the leases based off of the estimated annual mileage. And the mileage is the most important factor that determines when the vehicle should be sold. So for example, the vehicle is going to double the miles. That's not going to incur a cost, but it's likely going to mean that that vehicle is going to reach its sweet spot or its ideal replacement earlier. We'll have quarterly meetings with the county and the departments to update you on where those vehicles are in their life cycle, and we will notify you if you're reaching that sweet spot sooner. You don't have to take action to replace it sooner, but it would likely benefit the county to adjust the course if, in the example of double the miles, you were doing that.
Okay. You have a question? Oh, I
No,
thought you
just
wanted
a
to
comment, and that is that I think we have to take into account, in addition, I assume in these figures, you're not counting the staff time here that we're paying for to manage the fleet here, and that relieves our staff. So that's not in these figures, I assume.
Correct. These are just the costs
Those are
associated with
of the
buying,
program.
maintaining, fueling, and selling. There's no admin cost or anything like that.
Yeah, so we're also saving a lot of staff time for doing this in-house. I thought this was a good idea when we heard from you all several years ago. Must have been 3 or 4, because Will says he wasn't here. Thank you.
So let's say with some of our high mileage vehicles, those get turned over much more, let's say over the next 4 years, they get turned over more rapidly than we imagined. Is that going to drive the cost of it all, or?
The program is based off of the historical annual mileages that have been shown thus far on the fleet. So we've used those. If for some reason the program were to, if you were to drive more miles, then that would mean that your current set of situation or your current scenarios have changed, and that would ultimately require that the plan would change. So what you're looking at now is an apples-to-apples comparison of what you've done historically versus what the plan would be. If you drove more vehicles, more miles in the future, that would obviously be more expensive in the current scenario as it would be enterprise. So yes, the cost of the vehicle would go up, just like they would if you were operating the vehicle independently.
Anybody else have Mr. Money?
Yeah, I just wondered how you came up with 36 vehicles. I don't think the sheriff has near that many. Are you taking into account, whether it's, well, I'm not sure where all 36 came from.
I'll speak best I can, but I believe there are the sheriff's department vehicles, and I think there are other county vehicles, maybe DPW or other parts of the county that may be involved and they have vehicles. I don't know exactly where they all come from or who has ownership of them, but it was a fleet list that was provided to me that I read the analysis on.
Must be everybody, senior services and all of them.
Building and safety probably.
Yeah, building safety, it's all the vehicles that we
All the
have.
vehicles in our fleet,
Right.
not just sheriff's.
Mr. Robbins?
How does that work with the patrol cars? I mean, when you got cowboys and cowgirls out there, I know how they drive. Maintenance wise, there been a problem with the other agencies?
No, because of the same vehicles, and if anything, we'll be in on helping aid with the maintenance process, being able to find better solutions, lower cost solutions to make.
But you're getting the same, like for the sheriff's department, you'd be getting the same Ford Scepters or whatever they.
So we built the pricing to match the exact specs of what they requested.
So then, where are you at? You said Grand Haven.
Grand Rapids, I wish.
Grand Rapids. Okay, but so when our maintenance and oil changes, where do they go?
So right now, there's none on the peninsula, but I believe vans can be added. All dealerships are open, and there's a number of mom and pop shops beyond and off the peninsula that
So-
you can utilize.
There is in Traverse City, I think.
Many in Traverse City,
Oh.
many, very, very many in Traverse City, which is on the peninsula itself, there's none right now. So again, I believe vans does qualify and talking to them, doing their shop, that they would be able to do that if you want. Again, you don't have to go down this path to have us oversee it, in my opinion. You could do the rest of this program and continue to maintain the vehicles as you are now, and allow us now to buy them and sell them, and identify the right time for replacement. You don't have to, but it does certainly augment our ability to offer you the insight and the data that drives these decisions, if you do.
Yeah, Bill?
Can you explain what unrealized equity is? That sounds-
Yeah. So basically what it's saying is that the vehicles that you have on lease with Enterprise that haven't been sold yet are going to be equity. So there's certain vehicles that are in the fleet right now in that analysis that are positive equity and not negative equity. So that number down there is essentially illustrating the additional money that is in equity that you have in your lease vehicle with Enterprise.
If we didn't go in this direction, I think we have a lot more equity in our vehicles if we don't go in this direction, because we own them outright. I mean, it's not, am I following that?
Well, if you sell a vehicle, if you're buying a vehicle and you're gonna run it till you got 130,000 miles on it and it's not resellable, then there's no equity in it. But if optimally, we run it for 50,000 miles and we sell it, we get a little bit of equity out of it, and that rolls into the purchase of the next vehicle. I mean, it's why it's a fleet management. We get rid of it at the optimum time, and we get some equity out of it.
Yeah.
What we do now is we drive until they're not worth anything, and we're surprised when we get $4,000 out of it. So, or 2,500.
Well, it would be maybe more accurate if we knew what our unrealized equity is without going with this program. This makes it like,
Well,
am I missing a step?
I think what you're missing is you're confusing an income statement issue with a balance sheet issue. Our unrealized equity in our vehicles
Yeah.
is money that is tied up, that we can't use for anything.
Correct.
And until we sell, as Commissioner Walter says, until we sell a vehicle, we don't realize any of that equity. You're right, we buy, typically you buy a brand new vehicle off the lot, you can anticipate its value in terms of equity reduces by 15 to 20% the minute you drive it off the lot, the minute
Sure.
you own it. And that's the problem. You drive a vehicle until the wheels fall off and it has no value. It doesn't matter what your unrealized equity was a year ago. It doesn't matter.
Right, but if we go through this program, that loss of value is still there. It isn't changed because we're leasing. That value is built into the lease. So I'm just trying to find out if going this way changes our unrealized equity to this too.
So what it is, like I said, is you keep it till the optimum time, and then you get rid of it.
Sure.
You get some equity out of it. If I keep it past the optimum, past the time, I have no unrealized equity because I have no equity.
The only reason that you have unrealized equity is you paid something to acquire that.
Mhm.
So we're talking about the difference between perhaps spending, if you were to look at, 9 vehicles? If you were to look at possibly spending $500,000 to acquire 9 vehicles versus spending the net of $149,000. I think it was $149,000 was the cost, regardless of how much equity you have in our current vehicles. So it's the difference between $149,000 and maybe $500,000. That additional $350,000 you have to pay that to acquire that unrealized equity.
Yeah, all I'm saying is it's an equal, or it's a line that goes, and you're right, if we drive them down to zero, there's nothing there, but all our cars aren't driven down to zero. So I just don't know if we should consider that, because we already have, we're comparing it to nothing, because we don't know what our unrealized equity is with our current fleet. And there is an unrealized equity with our
Actually,
current fleet.
they've estimated a $44,000 unrealized equity in the vehicles that we would be selling. That's built right into the calculation.
And so to your point, Commissioner Walter, the main action item here to drive the cost savings is exiting the vehicle at the proper time. You will in fact have more equity, more gain coming back on the sale of the vehicle because we specifically are replacing the vehicle earlier. You're only achieving $44,000 for the 9 vehicles you're exiting now, primarily because they are so aged. As we go forward, that number goes up, and that money then becomes available to the county to be reinvested in the next generation vehicle. And that's why this has worked so well for the county, is that they get on a replacement strategy that can roll the equity from the previous vehicle and keep the cost down from generation to generation.
That's where I see the advantage. More, however these numbers are interpreted, but I do appreciate the expertise that comes with going to fleet management through your company.
Thank you.
Any other questions, Commissioner Money?
Yeah, I guess I'm trying to understand this. So you're saying that instead of selling them at 125,000, we're gonna sell them at 50,000 or 58,000 or something because and then we have to replace it? Does the lease stay the same on both cars, new one and old one?
So the sweet spot for most of your vehicles is somewhere between 4 and 5 years old, not to exceed 100,000 miles. So that will vary depending on the vehicle and the type of equipment that's on it. So 5 years is the max, no more than 100,000 miles is what we should be targeting, what we are targeting in these vehicles.
So you're saying that they, at 17, and I'm gonna do 20,000, so at 20,000 a year, then in 4 years, you would be selling it rather than go 5?
Correct.
You're saying then, and then whatever, if we're paying $500 a month lease, the new car comes in at $500 a month?
So the new car, so the existing vehicle does not have any equity applied to it, or has very little. The next car is going to have more equity or more money available to be used as a down payment onto that next generation vehicle. So what many counties experience is that on the next generation vehicle, payment actually will go lower as a result of the equity that comes out of that exiting vehicle.
Okay, and if that vehicle doesn't sell for, whatever the black book is estimated at, then we pay the difference, or when you buy the new one, it's less money is given to that.
But it's our job, and that's why I focus so specifically on our expertise in resale. That's what makes it happen. That's what makes it a good idea. We sell a lot of vehicles, and we have expertise. So yes, ultimately, if you don't, it doesn't sell for that because it has more miles, damage, something happens, then yeah, then that would be money that is not available for the next vehicle. We would have been if it was in better shape.
So each vehicle's,
Wait a minute, Mark, that dooms us to another hour if you don't stay here and keep us quiet.
Well, you've already proven that it doesn't work. I don't mean to be rude, but I gotta go to work.
So each vehicle's lease price is based on the previous car and the new retail price or whatever it is for the new car.
That is the way that you can option it. That's how we recommend it. That gains from the previous vehicle can offset whatever the cost of the next vehicle is for reducing the budget payment.
But we don't really know what the next lease would be amount until you do that, right?
Correct. 'Cause in 4 years from now, I cannot say for certain what the vehicle will cost or what the market will look like. The plan that's presented to me now is looking at the cost that has been done historically. What does this plan, or how does this plan compare to the past? And that's what that's the best way we can do it.
One of the other advantages of the program as well is you have a company that owns 2 million vehicles and buys $1 million, or excuse me, 1 million vehicles every year. They have probably the most significant market clout of any entity anywhere in buying vehicles. We did a comparison of the cost that we were able to acquire. The most recent vehicle we purchased was the Tacoma truck. We did a comparison of the price that we could obtain and the price that they were able to obtain. I don't have those figures in front of me, but do you remember what they were, Chris?
Yeah, it was about $7,000 of a delta between the price of the Tacoma. It was about $44,000, I think the county paid, and Enterprise was able to do just under $37,000. That's not typical, just to be honest with you. That's a big difference. But I do think that there's on average an opportunity to save a little bit of money on the transactions.
So their buying power that they have in the market can exceed anything that even the state of Michigan can give to the My Deal program. And that's why a number of counties are opting for this using this option to acquire vehicles rather than, again, purchase them and trying to manage that sale on our own rather than leaning on the expertise of the company that sells more vehicles than anybody else in the world.
Is the advantage I don't see stated here, but it seems pretty obvious, is that we'll have a newer fleet on any given day. But that isn't reflected in any of these numbers. Is that correct? I mean, we should just know that we're gonna have a newer fleet if we go in this direction.
Yeah, the average age of the vehicle will be about 3 years now. Will be about 2.5 to 3 years with Enterprise.
And any idea where we're at now? 4 or 5 probably?
Yeah, about 5 years old.
Yeah.
Really. So the average age of the fleet will be half. And so again, these are things, to your point, Commissioner, about the admin time, but there's other soft costs, soft benefits, if you will, of safety of image of employee or satisfaction. It's inappropriate for me to put a value on that myself, but it certainly is something to note that you're going to be driving a different type of vehicle. Vehicles will be newer on average, and what does that allow for? I mentioned a couple of examples, but it's going to be a different fleet.
So what's the average for patrol vehicles? You say 3 years, is that the same?
It's about 80,000 miles in that range, not to exceed that. Again, the cost of the equipment depends on, that will drive that one way or the other.
See, the only question I see is, yeah, we're rotating the fleet over, but I don't know what it costs to switch the whole patrol car over. If we're doing it quick, I think now we're doing probably 5 to 6 years, if every 3 years. We gotta add that cost in because
It's very true.
It's costly to switch over a patrol car.
Well, the fleet planning analysis, it did include the cost about $15,000 to make that replacement. I think the actual numbers are a little bit more than that. But the analysis, the 10-year model does show that, and the menu pricing for this year does have the exact number of what it would cost to get that vehicle. So we have accounted for, and that's part of the analysis, is to not only factor in the police equipment, but if you have vehicles with plows or decals or other items, if you have something that would serve as a canine or whatever, those costs that come with the vehicle do make a material difference in how the vehicle should be operated and how long it should be in service. You have to take into account of that, and you have to know how much of that initial cost can be redeemed in the resale market. In the case of police interceptors, very little. So it does ultimately drive the recommendation to be a little bit longer actually than what you might expect on the vehicle.
I'm not against your program, I'm just trying to look at all the costs of decaling and, we gotta factor that in. So, for the rest of the fleet, I think it works great, but, I think we'd have to really look at the sheriff's side of it, the turnover, sooner of the vehicles.
And can I just have one last question, bring this home to our current budget? What we had proposed, I think, was 5 vehicles in here. Is that right, Kathy, for 240,000?
I think it was 3 vehicles and on the 4th, I think it.
Or 4 vehicles?
Yeah, and then there was a request for a pass-along vehicle, where one would be sold, but it'd be passed along to EMS.
So, and that was, I think, in one of these sheets.
Yes.
Yeah, so that total, wasn't it like 204, 250 about?
250, 260.
So in these numbers that you have provided us, sir, the key number for next budget is the net cash, 181, is that what would be coming out of the county's pocketbook?
Yes, so the total first-year capital outlay for the 9 vehicles, that includes the aftermarket equipment for the police interceptors, is the 149,891.48.
And but that assumes purchase of 9 vehicles, not just 4 or possibly
And
5.
then establishing,
I don't see the 149.
it's on the menu pricing. So it's on the following sheet.
You look at the little, that sheet right
Yeah.
there.
Remember, we're old and blind, so this is not easy.
I'm not.
All right.
Would you like to read it to us then?
You stay as chair much longer, you will be. All right, so 149. I still can't read the dang thing.
For resale, 149,891.48.
Oh, okay.
That was requested for those 4, we took and used that data to generate.
So we've got long-term and short-term thoughts on this, and the short-term thought is it saves about $100,000 in our next budget.
Well,
Is that what the thought
it
process
would-
is? We're not putting $250,000 out for 4. It's.
you're putting $150,000 out for 9. So
Right.
we could probably give you an apples to apples comparison, but it would be substantially less. And that's the whole point. Our budget regarding vehicles is severely constrained by available resources.
Mhm.
And we could acquire 9 vehicles when we really only were planning to acquire 5 because of those constrained resources for substantially less by saving $100,000, as you point out. So what I'd really like, you've asked a lot of really good questions, and they're questions that Lauren and I have been asking Chris as well, so it didn't surprise me those were your questions. But what I'd like to do is, at a minimum, get Enterprise to present us with a contract with 2 options. One, to replace the vehicles that we plan to this year in the current budget, and one that actually fleshes out the purchase of 9, or the lease of 9 vehicles. So you can have those comparisons, and then present that as part of the 2026 budget for consideration at the time we adopt the budget. That's what I'd like to. What I'd like to take out of this meeting and pursue as for future consideration. Go ahead.
So you're saying the 149,000 is going to be what we pay next year for the leases, for the whole year? There wouldn't be any other cost for getting 9 vehicles? And then every time, so then when we add 9 more, we would be paying twice that by the time we
There's a
add.
component of the 149,000 that is a down payment, or basically a bill out for the equipment cost. Half the equipment cost is paid on the first bill from Enterprise, or that is charged out. So that's a 1-year amount. That should be noted in the menu pricing. It should say total first year money down. That occurs once, and again, that's for half of the cost of the equipment. For additional vehicles, then based on the equipment that you gave, we would assess something similar and have an ongoing payment that would be associated with that vehicle.
So when we get to 36 vehicles, how much a year would it approximately be that we would have to pay for leasing them?
So that would be, on the fleet planning analysis, that would be, I believe, in year 2030, under the lease column, it would show that number.
But just, if I went 4 times this year, it's over $500,000
What does it
every
say?
year.
I don't-
423, 153.
Every year.
And Commissioner, the reason that you're paying that though is that you're getting more equity out of the equity vehicles. That's not accounting for the equity. You're also experiencing a lower maintenance budget and a lower fuel budget. And that's how the fleet planning analysis is built, and that's why it's showing savings, because for that money that you're spending, you are retrieving larger equity, bigger gains off your solar vehicles, and a lower maintenance and fuel budget. So those things working together create a lower total cost of ownership.
Yeah, and the 423,153 was the projected cost of purchase of the leasing, less $128,000. That, I'm looking at the year 10, less $128,000 in the returned equity.
Correct. So in that example, you'll have 400 and some odd thousand lease payments, but then we're going to give you a check for the 120 some odd $1,000 to offset the cost of those vehicles. And then you'll also have, again, a lower maintenance budget and a lower fuel budget as a result of the newer vehicles.
So you're saying fuel's included in that?
Fuel's not included, but it's being monitored for how much you're spending and managing it as a variable.
Like tires and oil fall back onto us.
For maintenance.
Yes, so the maintenance cost would
The
be.
only thing we're leasing is the car.
Correct, we'd be helping administer the maintenance. We have a very, very robust maintenance department that can oversee and actually bring the manufacturers back in to pay for maintenance. So there's an expectation that even above just what can be done locally, there's some savings. But we haven't talked about that because that's something that needs to be determined by local shops. But the driving factor here is that having a newer vehicle, on average, you will have a lower maintenance obligation than you would have an older vehicle.
So what if a car is totaled?
You make an
So-
insurance claim.
Correct. You make an insurance claim. I believe the county works with the Michigan Municipal Risk Management Association.
We do.
As does all the other counties that I work with. And so basically what happens is that organization will assign a value. They do what's basically gap coverage, and they will pay out the value, the fair market value of that vehicle. I'll give you just anecdotally what happens generally speaking is that for most, especially the pursuit-rated vehicles, that value is usually greater than what an average resale might be because of the way they value them. That money comes back, the excess pays off the remainder of the vehicle. You have a now gain in an equity position coming back off that transaction. Usually for most, that goes as a down payment on the next generation vehicle to start over.
And is that part of just the normal?
Yeah, we would engage with you on that process. We would work to get the vehicle totaled out. We would acquire the next vehicle, find it, get it here as quickly as possible, work with your local radio shop to get the equipment installed, and then have the vehicle delivered, turnkey, and ready to go.
I like Jim's suggestion. I think seeing two different contracts and comparing would be helpful.
Commissioner Money?
Yeah, well, so if I look at year 10, I'm just saying it's 423,153. You're saying the least equity we would get back is 128,662,000, you know, and so that's going to cost us 300,000 a year.
Between those two expenses.
Yeah.
Between those two.
Leasing the
yes.
vehicles.
Yes, and then you'll also notice to the right of that is the maintenance column, and that number is decreased because of the newer vehicles.
Right. So there's another maybe 20,000. So it's still 200. So I mean it's almost 300,000 even if you take the maintenance. So that's more than if we bought 5 vehicles this year.
Actually, no, Commissioner Bonnick. If you look at the column where annual, it talks about fleet budget. It's comparing total cost to total cost. And this year, if we're purchasing 5 vehicles, that total cost, including maintenance fuel, is $423,000. And as things, so those numbers remain relatively the same, but over a 10-year period. The actual annual cost of acquiring and maintaining those vehicles fluctuates based upon the number that you purchase all the time. But in the 10th year, when we'd be acquiring, by this plan, 11 vehicles, it's no more than the cost of acquiring 5 vehicles 10 years before. Now, those numbers obviously are subject to inflation and all of that, which all of our expenses are. But they're looking at dollars today.
That's for that net cash column, the very far right, it will spell the difference between the current budget, 420,000, and the budget for that year. If you total all those net cash columns, that's what the savings number is based on in the lower right-hand corner. So the program is expected to generate savings. The goal here in the program is to ultimately yield a savings, and it's being done through a better replacement cycle. That's the main action item. What you're looking at is virtually like a random valley. Back in the day, you open it up, you have a roadmap to get from A to B. You have to take each year as it comes. We're going to meet with you and strategize and plan in the given years. But like a map, this gives you a sense of the route you'll take and what will be the most effective to generate the best outcome possible.
I don't know, it seems, I'm not sure that I follow, but it seems to me that once we're fully into this, it's gonna cost a lot more to have the fleet as opposed to buying our own vehicles.
No, sir.
Because right now, I mean, from what I understand, the yellow line there, fleet management, that's what we're spending this year. Or is that proposed for 2026 there?
The gold line is a representation of the current budget today. That's a budget of the average, not this year, but average to acquire or replace, maintain, and fuel the vehicles.
So on average, we're spending every year around $423,000 every year just on purchasing new vehicles, fuel, maintenance, and all that stuff on average.
Correct. And then the columns below that are the budgets for the subsequent years, for the next 10 years. And then the far right column is the difference between the year that we're showing for enterprise and what the current average year is to operate as it is.
Your estimates was based on 14,700 miles per car?
That's the average fleet-wide, so there's different mileage patterns being assigned for individual vehicles based on the usage. That's the fleet-wide average.
Oh, okay. Because I suspect the police cars would have much more.
But we don't usually buy 5 cars, that's very unusual. Usually it's 3, at the most 4. So we're estimating it on something that is very unusual, and I don't think we'll get 5 cars even this year. I do think it's only gonna be 4, because we have this student's reserve officer or something that would be one of those cars that I'm hoping we don't get. So I'm just thinking that this is based on a false premise. It's not on the average, it's just talking about this year, the gold line.
Well, the gold line for this year is a representation of the last 5 years of how many vehicles you've actually acquired here in the county. So it's an average. I think it says 4, 3 or 4. What does it say there in the gold line? The number of vehicles acquired each year.
5.
Say 5, okay.
Yeah.
It's an average of what you've done historically. It's also an average of price. It's not all police interceptor vehicles. It's not all DPW vehicles. It's a combination of the average cost per vehicle to acquire those vehicles. So that's just looking in the rearview mirror at what you've done historically, and going forward, I guess we can talk about those different scenarios, but that's what this plan is comparing itself to.
So if that average, then some years we did more than that. I'm assuming.
I can just give you a little history only if you want to call upon me.
I'd like to call upon you.
Sure.
Although Kathy wanted to speak first.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Kathy.
I was going to ask a question about the outfitting when we put the lights, that's built in, the outfitting of the ammo boxes, gun racks, the lights and everything. And then when that car is sold, we need to retrieve that equipment off, and it's our equipment, and we put it on the next car, and there's a cost there. Is that baked into this, or do you not use the same equipment car, like moving? And then we had this year where Ford changed the specs, and we didn't know. And we had to reconfigure, retrofit our ammo boxes and our gun racks, and we didn't know about the change in specs. Is that baked in?
We factored in $16,000 of aftermarket equipment costs into each replacement. So that can change, and that's whatever it needs to be. But that was the number roughly speaking that was presented, that I understand was needed for this year. So that is in the model.
And then Enterprise owns the lights and the red racks. We own the equipment, or the aftermarket equipment.
So some of that stuff could be transferred then to the other car where that would reduce some of our cost.
To the extent that we can do that.
Right, sometimes not.
My history was just going to be that when you are looking at this, at the fleet, that the majority, other than Steve and Al know from prior years, is that your fleet management has always been managed by the administrator and the finance director. It typically is what your department head comes to you and requests. The changes within the last few years have been that the construction code, they purchase their own cars. For a while, they were purchasing the retired fleet vehicles if they found that the vehicle could work for them, so it was less of a hit to her budget. They used to lease in the past, and we also used to lease for family court in the past as well, and the prior boards had phased that portions out. So when you're looking at your fleet, it is typically just 3 vehicles. So construction code owns their own. It's not part of the capital, in essence, of the cost allocation plan that we cost allocate those miles to. The mileage cost allocation is for buildings and grounds, is for the EMS, who always purchases a car that's retired. Senior services, they purchase their own. And do we cost allocate their mileage? No. So there is no, they just purchase the car and then whatever maintenance they put in, it comes out of their millage. The police officers, the police cars are the ones that are the majority of the purchases that we see, typically 3 cars. We did replace off schedule, a maintenance vehicle. The 2007 was rusted out. But we did the marine vehicle, the marine truck, and the T&T were both within those last 3 years that Mr. Dyer is referring to that were out of cycle. They weren't vehicles that we had ever had before.
Jail transport too.
And then, well, the trail transport van is typically something, because it's the least amount of miles, it usually goes longer than that 5-year. So I just wanted to give a little bit of history of that. This has been managed prior with administrators, and it's typically every 3 years. And then those that are left over, that have value, go to other departments. And then they do not have a monthly payment. You know, it goes by the mileage used. Thank you.
I'm sorry, I'm gonna have to excuse myself. I do another meeting downstate in about an hour, so I appreciate your time and thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you,
very
appreciate
much.
it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there other companies that do this? I mean, this is a huge contract, and I guess it would be a no-bid contract if we went in this direction, so.
I think there are other companies that may do it, but not to the volume that Enterprise does and to the advantages that they have.
Thank you. Safe
Thank you.
travels.
I guess what's the consensus on this board as far as how to move forward with this proposal?
I think we should move forward. I think it's a good idea. And we have to factor in all the staff time for what we do right now.
I'd like to see what other ones propose, you know, and I'd like to see it more analyzed on 3 cars a year rather than 5. I just think that's would be more realistic.
Okay, is there anybody else?
My assumption is if we did it on 3 cars per year instead of 5, at the end, we wouldn't have the equity. So I think we need some comparisons.
That's really the whole point. You know, I respect what you may have been doing in the past, but that doesn't mean
Right.
you were doing it well.
If we run them all down until they're not worth anything, we aren't saving any money.
That's exactly.
Rather than go out for bids, I would prefer, we've got 6 counties around here that all do enterprise. I think we ought to reach out to them and get some recommendations.
I'll do that.
But that's just me.
Well, I'd like to know if there's counties who go with somebody else.
I'm not aware of any, there again, might be private sector companies that do this. I'm not aware of anyone that does it for the public sector like Enterprise does, but I can find out.
If you can find that out for me. Then I feel comfortable doing a no bid. I just, if there's someone else out there, I'd like to hear from them.
They definitely have an advantage with the size of their program.
They do. Sometimes other companies are more hungry though because they don't have that advantage.
All right, so are you comfortable? I'm not getting the vibe of just saying no. I'm getting the vibe, getting more information. So, is that something you can gather, see what other counties are doing?
I can do that.
Get a couple different, from my understanding, that was what you were proposing anyway, a couple different cost analysis anyway, so, with that, is that something you can do? On our
Yes.
next budget session, come with something like that?
What I'd like to do, again, is present you with that additional information and then some actual contract numbers that we could accept or reject.
And I wouldn't have a problem with that either as well, that way we'd have multiple options, but.
For me, I'll say I like the concept only because of the expertise, like we said, that they bring to the table. Whether it's them, someone else, I just want to make sure we get the best deal for the county.
All right. Feel like you got some direction?
Yes.
All right. Next up, we have number 2, property tax revenue projections. You gotta leave. All right. You had that in our packet, didn't you? Somewhere?
There were, you would have received, if we can have treasurer and the finance director, I guess, come up to the microphones. You'd received, I think, in the email last night, a projection from John regarding the general fund property tax revenue. I also provided you this morning with some projections.
So I'm not sure I got what he sent last night.
Is this what you gave us?
That's what I gave you this morning. John sent by email a projection that he did, and he can explain where that number comes from. Basically, where this discussion arose is when we looked at revenues, in particular the portion of our general fund budget that's financed by property tax, which is about 65% of the entire revenue of the general fund. What we had projected was simply taking the 2025 apportionment numbers and applying the millage rate that was approved in the spring. And that's the levy that you have for 2025, and that's what you anticipate to collect in 2025. And that was simply rolled over with just a percentage adjustment into the 2026 budget. And I suggested that the Budgeting Act requires estimates, and that simply saying that our tax revenues were going to be basically flat from 2025 to 26 was not an appropriate estimate. I had Andrew look at the issue, and on the document that I provided to you, Exhibit A are his projections regarding revenue, making certain assumptions, assuming that there are increases of 2.5%, 4%, and 6% of uncappings, and then also some assumptions regarding additions and subtractions, additions and losses, what he deals with. Additions would be something where somebody builds a new house or adds a garage or something like that, where the cost the taxable value increases because of that. Losses would be destruction and demolitions and things like that. So he's made some assumptions, and he comes up with a roughly 4.3 to almost $4.4 million in projected revenue. Then what I did is take what he provided to me as Exhibit B which shows our taxable value and revenue generated by that taxable value from 2015 to 2025, and did some assumptions. If we took the lowest amount that our revenue has increased, tax revenue has increased over the last 10 years, that would be 1.3%. That would produce one number. And if we took the highest, 8.79%, that were increased over the last 10 years, that would produce another number. And then I also applied compound averages, which were for 10 years, an average of 5.24% compounded each year. And then if you just look at the 4 years since COVID, 2022 through 2025, that would be 6.12% compounded annually. So I gave, just with simple math, applied those rates. And the highest number is $14,888,000, which applies the highest year percentage of 8.79%. The lowest number is $13,800,000, so roughly $1 million difference. And that applies the lowest rate that we've seen an increase in revenue over the last 10 years. And then when you apply the compounded averages, for the 10-year, 5.24 compound average over 10 years produces $14.4 million in revenue. And if you apply a 6.12 rate looking at the last 4 years, that produces $14.5 million in revenue. So I'm suggesting that with those calculations and the fact that they correlate fairly closely to the $14.4 million that Andrew projects, that it wouldn't be unreasonable for us to use a $14.4 to $14.5 million estimate for our general fund revenue. Now, knowing what that is gives you the opportunity to decide, again, how that's spent, or is that applied to reduction in taxes. But simply looking at a number from the previous year is, in my opinion, not appropriate for purposes of estimating your revenue for the 2026 budget. And if John could explain perhaps the analysis that he provided, that would.
So I took a different analysis, more structured, based on just the Headley projection average. The Headley is stated by the state of Michigan, and they annually produce what they increase. If the average is 3.1% growth, and we calculate the previous years by that, we can come up with $6.1 million in potential collections next year. If we take the compounded average gross revenue projection over the course of 4 years, the last 4 collection years, 24, 23, 22, so on, it'll be 4.1. Multiply that out, we get 14.25. The difference between my models is about 138,000, and the way I projected is we're not certain of all the projections. We can average what is known, and I prefer to go with what has been calculated as real increases in both the Headley and the gross revenue projections, and weigh those out. I think a more aggressive stance would be to look at the cost average, or the gross revenue, excuse me, with taking only 50% of what is projected. My intention is not to overstate, but to mitigate the risk of overspending in 2026. We could take and understand it, a good exercise to look at different ways to do things. But if we use the 26 revenue of 14.5, we have a gap between my projections, that projections. I would highly recommend that we increase our contingency by at least that much, just to absorb, if in case we don't get the revenue. My approach takes half and half. I want to take the 50% of the gross revenue that we're projecting, knowing that it's likely going to come in higher. In addition to that, we're going to have increases to the tax base, which through the last few years roughly added about $46 million annually. And multiply that out, it's about another $150,000 in new taxable developments on average. So these are two different ways to look at it. Mine's a little bit more conservative. Again, it's just based off of what I can rely on and not look at trends or look at speculation or say that the market is going to continue the way it has. And I'm not qualified to do that, so I got to just look at what I've seen from previous history. So.
Yeah, I was wondering if the loss of Sugarloaf, income from Sugarloaf has been included, in those estimations. Because, I mean, that's a huge chunk of property with a high tax value.
Most of those, what we've done is looked at, what all the analysis does, looks at historical data. So it wouldn't necessarily include the Sugarloaf data itself, but it would include other losses that have been incurred over time.
I'd be moving forward.
So, but that's an important, because I mean, we've been adding property that's been taken out of the tax rolls all the time. Maybe not that particular parcel or that particular amount, but that's part of this analysis over why you look at it. If you're looking at a 10-year experience, that's why some of those years, even if you had really good real estate markets, for example, you might not have as good an increase in taxable value because of that sort of thing. So it does take those historical incidents into consideration.
Well, in every year, I've asked for tax reduction for the property. If this year, the board would consider that, because last year they said, let's do a one budget first, then we could do that maybe. So I'm thinking if we do a tax reduction, I mean, is that considered?
Again, the role that we play in this, well, specifically that I play as administrator and your budget officer under the Uniform Budget Act, is to make those estimates. You guys decide what to do with it, which would include how you spend it, or whether or not you decide not to raise some of that through a reduction in the levy. So all of those things are on the table. I'm just advocating that as we're doing the budget, we make a more realistic estimate of what our revenue is going to be. Again, that can be put into the general fund, it can be put into contingency as a portion, as John suggested, into contingency. A portion of it could be applied to tax savings. But this is just one element of what I think, frankly, we've been underestimating revenue in our budget. And I do not like the idea of saying we're going to adopt a budget with intentionally low revenue estimates, knowing that we're going to amend those at some point in time in the budget cycle. Because if you're doing that, you're not really doing a budget. You're running a checkbook, basically saying, we know we're going to get income at some point in time in the future, so we'll add it into the checkbook later. You're supposed to be, the budget you're supposed to adopt is an actual planning tool. And if you want to plan to do tax relief, that's the only way you're going to be able to do it, is to have a more accurate projection of what your revenues are going to be.
Yep.
I was going to suggest 50% too. Just another thought on Sugarloaf. because I know you've brought that up a few times. It will, what is going to happen, another way to look at it is what's going to happen up there is going to probably increase the values of all the homes and future homes in that area. So I think long-term, we're going to have a net increase because that would have probably been a whole bunch of single-family homes. But house values are going to go up for existing homes and for future homes, future building.
Ty?
Well, we got two different estimates, and I think I heard
Actually,
John.
3.
Yeah, 3. I think I heard,
Moderately conservative and
yeah,
another level.
I think I heard John say he could go with a higher one as long as we build in a contingency. And we have way more capital improvement things we need to do than we can possibly do.
Yeah.
And we ought to prioritize those and then see where we end up. All of those don't have to be done the first of the year. But I would favor estimate a little bit high, but build in the safeguard. But then when we prepare our capital improvement plan, we can be more realistic about how we prioritize.
Unfortunately, I'm going to have to leave. I have a medical appointment that I have to be at in Traverse City, which I kind of forgot about until this morning. But the second item or the last item on our agenda was to prioritize capital improvements. What I'd like to do is we've got our treasurer, finance director, myself, we'll sit down and do exactly what you propose. Agree on a revenue estimate, agree on a change in how much of that would be allocated to general fund, how much to contingency, which again could be used for tax reduction if you so chose, but give you a better idea of what dollar amount you might be able to look at for prioritizing capital improvements. Because I would much rather that you decide at the beginning of the year, even though you know you're not going to do all these projects in January, but say, these are the projects we want to do, we want to budget these, and give the administration the authority in the budget resolution to go forward to at least explore how to do those projects, rather than waiting until the last minute when we desperately need that project to be done, to give you, because if you really want us to do bids for these major projects, the only way we're going to be able to do that is to have a way more significant lead time than we're getting now to decide when and how to do those projects. And that's what I'd like to present to you at the next budget meeting that we can schedule to actually prioritize and decide what capital projects we're going to do in 2026.
Jim, you were going to look at those and give us,
Yes.
the ones that we can paste in and say, this isn't an option here, this is a capital.
We still intend to do that, but again, it really does help us to know have an agreement on what our revenue is going to be to make that determination. It matters as to whether we have possibly $100,000 to work with or possibly $1 million to work with. It makes a big difference.
But I also think it makes a big difference with our budget. If these, you think of CIPs as being optional, but if they aren't optional,
They're not optional.
we need to build them into not just our priority of CIP, but
Our actual budget.
we need to have a line that says, okay, whatever else we gotta move, whatever else we gotta do, and, you hate to think of personnel in that regard, but,
100%.
and other expenditures that you think are priorities only because they're in this document as opposed to that document. We gotta move some of these into our regular budget and let us know what they are.
Couldn't agree more. And I'd much rather overestimate revenue and have to make a downward adjustment in the spring when we do our levy on the general property tax than to underestimate it and have our hands tied.
Well, I like the conservative side a little, giving us a variety. And I think, I take comfort in also knowing that, yeah, things can go to hell in a handbasket, but they're gonna have to do them pretty quick to affect our revenue for next year. Because all of our SEVs and taxable values are gonna be set here in about another 4 months.
Yep, December
And-
31st is tax day.
And our studies they don't go forward, our studies go back 3 years. So those are already set and they're already high.
Yep.
So, but I like your more than what we might normally project. And be a little careful though.
I think all of those estimates are, the only one that I would reject out of hand is selecting the 8.75%, which was the highest over the last 10 years.
Right.
I think the analysis by Andrew is reasonable. The analysis by John is reasonable. They all come within a couple $100,000.
We're splitting hairs.
And yes, we're splitting hairs, but I think we can reach an agreement on what that's going to be and present a good revenue budget to you with those changes. And I've discussed some of the budget recommendations with other department heads, and I think there are some that were, again, perhaps a little bit overly conservative. When one good example was the transfer tax on the real estate transfer tax. We were estimating the department budget was even less than what we're projected to receive this year. So another $50,000 very likely would be even a conservative estimate of what it will be next year. So we're going to look at all of those and give you a number that I think you can more count on to decide what capital improvements you would like to consider. And what other, if tax relief is your objective as well, that can be factored in.
I just want to say, since we don't even have a state budget and we don't have a federal budget, I would be very, very, very careful about assuming too much about what we're going to get from that source.
We had that conversation this afternoon during our break, and
Yeah.
But again, even though we don't have a state budget right now, we will have a state budget eventually. So we'll have to make some assumptions based on what those discussions have been today. I mean, to simply say it's going to be zero
We just don't know. Yeah.
But to say it's zero is also probably not the smartest thing to do.
Right.
I just want to address Commissioner Bright regarding reducing the millage on the collection. We approved collections in the spring, and you actually have adopted a budget in the previous fall.
Correct.
So you have to start in the fall project so that it can be applied in the spring. We're not cutting services. And until we're at the point that we have a surplus of revenue, we're not using the fund balance to balance for contingency to offset things.
But again, that's true, but the General Budget Act requires us to base our budget on the 2026 levy. What we collect, it doesn't matter when we collect the taxes, we can only budget based on the levy, and we have to make an estimate of that.
Correct. I'm talking specifically about the reduction.
Oh, we're on the same page. You're absolutely correct on that. But the thing I want to make sure everybody knows is John's right. The levy that we did in the spring of 2025 is what we have what we should have used as our budget for 2025 as well. But I'm proposing that we do that in 2026. You have to make an estimate of what that levy will be. And that's really what Andrew did in his analysis.
All right, any further questions? All right, so we're on the assumption you'll get our capital project prioritization, kind of get that ready for our next budget meeting and
Yes.
get that for us. And Kathy, do you have anything else to add?
I think that it would be helpful too if we had an update on the schedule of when department heads would be coming, so we know who we would be seeing. I know the board's been scheduling appointments with these people.
I think she has those established, and I will have her send out a notice, an email so you can know who's coming and when.
Good, thank you.
I think everybody that's indicated a willingness to do it has signed up already.
Are some expressing an unwillingness to do it?
I think there are a couple of department heads that elected officials that did not want to pursue it.
From my understanding, we have 3 next week, right?
I believe so, yes.
3.
I can tell you, actually 4. It's facilities, 911, emergency services, sheriff, and parks and rec. Those are scheduled for the 16th.
I think those are really good ones to hear.
Yep.
That's definitely the meat of the bones there.
Those are pretty sizable requests
Yeah.
on their spreadsheet, and that will help us as we start putting things in here, because you'll be giving us thumbs up or thumbs down.
And then on the 23rd, we have senior services, building safety, information technology, and equalization. On the 30th, we have register of deeds, MSU extension, the courts, and finally the prosecutor.
I think that's a good order, to get these people in by, the size of these requests, because we will need sooner than later to have your thumbs up, thumbs down with regard to what Administrator mentioned.
No, and that's what I want every board member to be prepared next week when these departments come, get your questions ready so we can, because we're gonna have a full, we're starting at 3 and we got a regular meeting at 6:30, so the more we're
And I
up
can
to
tell
speed
you
on
what
that,
I've
we can
been
move
telling
forward.
them I want them to do is to, again, give a deep dive into what it is that their department does and why it costs what it costs, and then to also focus on any changes that they are making from the current 2025 budget into next year. Those are the 2 things I've asked them all to focus on.
And you can tell them that we'll read their information, so they don't have to summarize that. They ought to just talk to us about what's not in there.
All right, any follow-up questions? You all good, Kathy? Anything else?
I'd like to suggest that the administrator be excused to his doctor's appointment.
All right.
I suggest that.
Go for it.
You're good.
Thank you, I appreciate that very much.
Have fun, Jim.
I'm sure that I will, Alan, I'm sure that I will.
All right, with that, we are up to public comment. Mr. Wiesner.
Oh, I have one of those too. We'll have to compare notes.
Yes, we should.
Bill Wiesner, Elmwood Township. Simple solution, one person, one ballot, one vote, one day. And just to review the first page again, very simple. Voter ID, citizen-only voting, paper ballots, hand counts, paper poll books, in-person voting only, small local precincts, and one-day elections. People say we have paper ballots, but not the kind that's totally verifiable, not counting them by hand and such. This should be done all by the 2026 finals, so it's right around the corner to get this done. And budgeting, it's going to would cost less than what, from what I've seen, it's less money than the machines, and it's verifiable, and that's a big advantage. On the second page, the ranked choice voting says Alaskans are fighting back. This is the second time. They tried to recall it, but it didn't go through. They lost by just 50.55 to 49.45 in the recount. But, and by the way, in 2019, the way this started in Alaska, Alaskans for better elections, pretty much just the opposite. The ranked choice voting is being brought in by people that want to do these things, and they find that they can win the elections that way. So people didn't understand how the system worked on page 3. Foundations for Government Accountability. They publish reports to show ranked choice voting discards legal ballots, it increases election errors, and it undermines the principles of one person, one vote. This guy, Sean Fleetwood, writing for the Federalist, calls this, and this one I can resonate with for sure, calls this the dirty secret of ranked choice voting, one that punishes conservatives for voting their conscience and refusing to rank opponents they don't support. Why are we making people vote for five different candidates? I went to the library when the person from Petoskey, she works as a librarian there, she was promoting the ranked choice voting, and but I don't want to have to figure out 5 candidates and strategize that. I want to vote for the best candidate, and if it's less than 50%, so be it, or have a second election to narrow it down. But don't vote for 5. These are not growing pains, trying to understand the system and get in the swing of things. These are symptoms of a system designed to complicate, confuse, and obscure. They're not bugs, they're features designed that way. And it favors one political side. Basically, it's the Democrats that are mostly promoting this. Fleetwood lays it out. He says ranked choice voting isn't some bipartisan innovation. It's a scheme of the left to disenfranchise voters that can elect more Democrats. And that's what happened here. For District 2, the guy was here, and he came and spoke before he ran for position. He was saying how nice ranked choice voting. I met him outside, and I said, hey, I just got this book. It lists the other side, and it's free. And I'll give you the email address. Can I get it to you? He said, no. And he ran out. Maybe he would reconsider it now and realize he should be looking at both sides, but that's what happened then. And so it's just, this is not a good thing. A grassroots group, it's called Alaskans for Honest Voting, is re-going after this. People came to us, they said. Now they're understanding how bad this is. Okay, so I'm kind of missing, I got a few seconds here. But we didn't quit. This guy from Alaska, he's part of the government. And in 2025, we filed again. This time we're focused, experienced, and ready. Politics and pride have no place in this. It's time to, just read the highlights there. Both of these need to be done quickly. Ranked choice voting is not good. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill.
Thank you, Bill.
Any other public comment? If not, commissioner comments? All right, not, we're adjourned.